You heard of the never-ending story? Well, gamers have the never-ending backlog. If you've never heard about the backlog before, the infamous backlog. For a gamer, a backlog is basically a list of games that are very popular amongst many other gamers, mainly the common community of gamers. Be like, hey, we played this game, it's been out for a while, and yet you have not played it. And everybody's backlog is going to differ in some way or another. Like, for example, I've played every single God of War game except Ascension. There's other people who have played Ascension or maybe even some of the PSP games, but never played the original God of War trilogy. That's on their backlog just as much as Ascension is on mine. And most gamers know what that is. So what I wanted to mention in this video is exactly how do we tackle the backlog? What's the best way to kind of make sure you pack a dent into that list? Because that list is ever so growing at a steadily rate, because games are coming out every single year, so eventually there's going to be something, at least one or two games that get added repeatedly over to that backlog, because we're not going to buy every single video game that comes out. Like, for example, it's only been about a third of the year so far, thus here in April, entering into May, and we had a couple of games that are getting high critical praise, but I know I'm not going to be able to play until much, much later, because right now they're not a top priority. Like Neo, God, I can only think of any other games. Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, obviously on the Switch. Those are games that I would love to play, but because of certain circumstances, whether it be Neo's crushing difficulty, testing my patience, or Breath of the Wild being on the Switch, which I'm still holding on reserve, I'm not going to be able to play those games until much later, so therefore they'll be added to my backlog. So they just piles on and piles on. And eventually you're going to end up with a backlog that is going to take up an enormous amount of your time. And right now I can personally say that my backlog traces back to the days of the PS3. Like, we're talking early PS3. And if you want to get unofficial, I even have some PS2 games on that backlog. However, they're PS4 remasters or PS4 HD ports, if you want to call them that, whatever. Like, they're not remastered, remade, or whatever. Like, they're not polished up for the PlayStation 4 console, but they're able to be played on that console. They're put up on the PlayStation Network or even the Xbox. Like, I have some games on there, like The Witcher 2. I have that on the Xbox One, but it's through backwards compatibility. So that backlog is still growing, especially when PlayStation Plus and Xbox games with Gold keep offering these free games that you missed out on and you've heard so many great things about, but you never managed to gather it. So I have a shit ton of games on my backlog, and right now I'm going to bring up a small little sample that I have on my notes here. If I could bring it up. It's a very small chunk of my actual backlog, because trust me, there's way more games from where this comes from. But a good little piece of an example of where my backlog sits right now. Right now, after playing, as of the recording of this video, after finishing up The Last Guardian, which I managed to rent through Gamefly, and after I send it back, I'm going to be jumping into some DLC. Ever so often I kind of break away from the usual backlog of just standalone main games, and I actually tackle some of the DLC that I got with some of the game of the year editions that I got, like Fallout, some of the Fallout games like Fallout New Vegas, Fallout 3, BioShock. I have the BioShock Infinite DLC, the Burial at Sea episodes. I still have yet to play those, and the one that I want to tackle next that could take up to like a week, considering that I have school, I have a girlfriend, that takes up time. I also have to go to the gym. Eventually school's going to pick up again. So I feel like within a week I'm going to tackle the Skyrim DLC. I never played the Skyrim DLC, the Dragonborn and the Hearts Fire, I think it was called, or something like that, and Dawnguard, the vampire one. Never played that DLC. I played the original game and beat the main story, but I never dived back into the world of Skyrim to be able to play those standalone DLC packs, as well as get some other side missions done. So I'm going to be jumping into that, and then after that, I want to see if I can get my 3DS back from my girlfriend, who's been stealing it for the past, like, half a year to try to finish up Ocarina of Time, and maybe, just maybe, finally beat Pokemon Y, because I can't even remember what Pokemon I have on that. I might even just start a new game and pick up from there. So after that I got Borderlands the pre-sequel, God of War Ascension, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, Rain, which is that smaller independent game, Payday 2, Soul Calibur 5, and then back onto the PS4 with Destiny the Taken King edition that comes with all that DLC and fun stuff. Then, as I mentioned, Witcher 2 on the Xbox One through backwards compatibility. And then, as I mentioned in my Mass Effect Andromeda review, finally finish up the Mass Effect saga, for now at least, with Mass Effect 3. Never played 3, I played 1 and 2 before jumping into Andromeda, but now it's time to wrap things up with Mass Effect 3. Then it's Crysis, again, going back to some of those ports over to the PlayStation 4 and PS3. Crysis, Max Payne, I got the original Max Payne, but it's on the PS3, I believe. Hitman Absolution, Assassin's Creed Unity. I still have 2 Assassin's Creed games left to go. I got Unity and Syndicate, but it's not listed here, but I still have Syndicate. Gears of War 2, Dragon's Crown, Puppeteer, Metro Last Light, XCOM Enemy Unknown, Game of Thrones, the Telltale series on PS4, Broken Age, which is again another smaller indie game, Halo 3 through the Master Chief Collection, Bloodborne, which again a little hypocritical to mention considering that the beginning of this video I mentioned that I don't want to buy Neo only because I don't want to be yanking my hair out every 15 minutes, but I did get Bloodborne because I've heard stories of people that are not fan of those soul games, those really difficult games, jumping into Bloodborne and actually ended up loving it, so maybe I'll be one of those people. But again, not every game is for everybody, as I talked about before. And then Dead Rising 3. And that's the games that I have listed. There's still a shit ton. There's literally like, I have a bag right here from Best Buy. And I got some games in here. What do I have? Let's just see what do I have. For the 3DS, I got Pokemon Omega Ruby. I rebought it because Ruby is one of my favorite Pokemon games. Fire Emblem's Conquest. Quantum Break. Still got the tags on there from the in-store pickup. And then there's a PS4 game in here. What is this? Oh yeah, The Division. So my backlog just never ends, whether it be physical media or digital media. And my routine for not only tackling my backlog but also being able to play it is, one, when my list starts to get a little small and I feel like, oh, hey, look at that, I only got like 3 games left. That's when I eventually go back to my download list, on my digital download list on my PSN, and start to look at all the games that I added to the queue, but I never actually downloaded and played. So I look at it and be like, okay, I can afford to play this, I can play this, I can play that. And also I try my best to change up the genre. So I don't ever want to play a first-person shooter and then right afterwards play another first-person shooter. That's just, it's not fun, it's redundant, and it gets tiresome. Because eventually I'm going to be like, I'm tired of first-person shooters. Can I please play something else? And another thing to consider is that we also got some ongoing current games coming out that I'm holding out for. Like, for example, right now I want to jump back into my backlog, but I know that my backlog is going to have to take a break when Injustice 2 comes out in just a few weeks. So that needs to be taken into account, knowing that this backlog is going to just stay there, roaming, just looming over you like a dark cloud, and be like, hey, you still got all these great games to play. And of course, it's a good problem for a gamer to have. As for actually playing these games, it's actually rather simple. 2 to maybe 3 hours right after breakfast during the day. And of course, that's considering I don't have work or school to deal with on a day off, or a day where I have a late shift. I don't go in until like 5, 6, or 7 at night, and I can afford to play during the day, that amount of hours. Then I jump into the game between 2 to 3 hours. And of course, it's not consecutively. I sometimes take breaks. I go to the bathroom. I drink some water. I stretch. I check out things on my phone. I'm not constantly staring at the screen. So I play for about 2 to 3 hours after breakfast, and then I normally would play 2 to 3, or at least 2 to 2.5 hours right before going to bed. But it's a cruel world when you realize that maybe playing video games right before jumping into bed might be the reason for why you can't actually fall asleep. Because if you think about it closely, you are invested in something that cranks up your adrenaline, especially when you got some high-speed action going on in an action or first-person shooter type of game. And you are actively working your brain overtime because you're working with something that requires hand-eye coordination. But at least the majority of games deal with that. So when you're working these two things together and really hyping your brain up, playing this game minutes before jumping into game, expecting to fall asleep quickly, That is not going to happen. So lately I've been conducting some experiments where I try my best to turn off whatever game it is that I'm playing about 30 minutes before going to bed. So I play about an hour and a half to 2 hours of whatever game that is. And of course the game itself also depends how much I actually play per day. If it's a short but sweet and very linear game like the one that I'm playing right now, The Last Guardian, then I play between 2.5 to 3 hours a day. Not even during a sitting, but overall throughout the entire day that I'm awake, I play about 2 to 3 hours, like an hour and a half or two during the day, and then about an hour and a half to two, or if I can afford it, 2.5 later on at night, and try to see how much I can actually play and beat this game before week's end. I try to round out my games to like the ending of the week. So if I can afford so, I will try to beat a game by the end of Sunday so I can start up a new one on either Monday or Tuesday. Of course, sometimes things don't work out. You got to go to work, you got a girlfriend, you got school. Things are going to interfere. So sometimes things need to be pushed here and there, and that's what makes tackling a backlog so daunting. But again, it's something that I think we should look at a much more positive light, because you're gonna have an endless supply of games to play, and that only means that you got these endless amount of worlds to jump into and these stories to fully experience and to just lose yourself into. At least until the bank comes knocking at your door saying that you are negative $500 and they take away your assets. Then I think you should maybe consult somebody. Like now. I mean, you probably need to walk there because they probably took your car and your phone. They probably didn't even take your phone because they disconnected it, so what's the use? Okay, that was a dark path. Anyways, that does it for me. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments below, what are your guys' exercises and techniques in order to pack a dent into that backlog of yours. If you're a hardcore gamer, you know that a backlog is something that feels overwhelming at times, because sometimes you're playing a game and when you're trying to really invest yourself in that game, you're only thinking about the next game that you're going to pop right into. You know, open up the case, pop in the disc, load it up, download the fucking update, but then finally jump into this brand new world where you get to spend all these dozens of hours jumping into this world and absorbing it and digesting it and being able to interact with the characters and all that. But then right in the middle of doing that, you think about the next game. What are your experiences trying to get as many games out of your backlog done as possible? What is your routine playing from day to day as a gamer? Any of your experiences and feedback is welcome in the comments below, guys. Be sure to let me know. Also, make sure you like and share this video. Make sure you hit the subscribe button for more down below. And of course, follow me on Instagram and on Twitter at DarkSpiderDavid. Until next time, guys, take care. I will see you all later.